Maria clutched her crying infant brother tighter as the auctioneer announced 3 years of servitude for the bottle of milk she'd stolen to save his life. A tall Apache warrior stepped from the crowd's edge, pelts draped over his shoulder, and spoke words that silenced every voice in the square. The debt is paid. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty town square of Socorro, New Mexico in the summer of 1883. Heat waves rose from the packed earth, distorting the wooden buildings that lined the main street like crooked teeth in an aging mouth. The air smelled of horse manure, tobacco smoke, and desperation, a scent that 12-year-old Maria Castellanos had come to know all too well in the 3 days since her mother's fever-racked body had finally stilled. In her trembling arms, bundled in a threadbare cotton blanket stained with dirt and tears, her infant brother Thomas whimpered. His face was flushed red, his tiny fists clenching and unclenching as hunger gnawed at his belly. Maria pressed him closer to her chest, trying to muffle his cries, knowing that each wail only drew more attention to them, attention they could not afford. She had tried everything. She had begged at the back door of the restaurant where her mother once worked as a washerwoman, only to be shooed away by the new cook who knew nothing of their family's tragedy. She had searched the alleys for discarded food, finding only rotting vegetables and moldy bread that made Thomas's stomach cramp even worse. She had even attempted to work, offering to sweep the general store's floors. But Mr. Henderson had looked at her with cold eyes and said, "No charity for drifters." But Thomas needed milk. His cries had become weaker over the past day, and Maria knew with the certainty of one who had already watched death claim a loved one that her brother would not survive another sunset without nourishment. That was why, in the grey hour before dawn, she had slipped through the back window of Henderson's general store. Her heart had hammered against her ribs as she'd navigated the darkness, her bare feet silent on the wooden floorboards. She had found the cold room where they kept the dairy, and her hands had closed around a single glass bottle of fresh cow's milk, cool, white, precious as gold. She had almost made it out. The door had creaked. Mr. Henderson had appeared with a lantern and a shotgun. And now, 4 hours later, Maria stood in the center of the town square with her baby brother, while a crowd of townspeople gathered in a loose circle around them. "Theft is theft!" Mr. Henderson's voice boomed across the square, his thick mustache twitching with indignation. "I don't care if she's a child or a grandmother. The law is the law, and this town was built on order and justice." Maria kept her eyes fixed on Thomas's face, refusing to look at the crowd. She had no words to defend herself. What could she say? That she had stolen to save her brother's life? That would only confirm the crime, that her mother had died and left them alone. The frontier had no patience for orphans without means or family. Sheriff William Tucker stepped forward, his silver badge glinting in the sunlight. He was a tall man with weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much violence to be easily moved by a child's plight. "The girl owes Mr. Henderson the cost of the milk, plus damages for the broken window latch. That comes to $3.50. A murmur rippled through the crowd. $3.50 might as well have been $300 for a penniless orphan. "Since she can't pay," the sheriff continued, his voice flat and official, "and she has no kin to speak for her, the debt will be settled through indenture auction. Starting bid is 3 years of service." Maria's legs trembled, but she forced herself to remain standing. She would not collapse. She would not give them the satisfaction. Beside her, Thomas let out a pitiful cry, and her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The auctioneer, a portly man named Silas Grimes, with a voice that carried like thunder across the plains, climbed onto the wooden platform that served as both a stage for town announcements and, on darker days, a place where human lives were bartered like cattle. He adjusted his suspenders, cleared his throat, and surveyed the growing crowd with the practiced eye of a man who had sold everything from horses to homesteads. "Ladies and gentlemen of Socorro," he began, his voice oily with false charm, "we have here a young girl, approximately 12 years of age, caught red-handed stealing from one of our most upstanding citizens. The debt stands at $3.50, plus the cost of her keep until the auction concludes." Maria felt dozens of eyes boring into her. Women in bonnets whispered behind gloved hands. Men in dusty work clothes spat tobacco juice and shook their heads. A few children her own age stared with a mixture of pity and fascination, grateful it wasn't them standing in that terrible spotlight. Thomas's cries had subsided into weak whimpers. He was too exhausted to even protest his hunger now. Maria bounced him gently, whispering Spanish lullabies their mother had sung, "Duérmete mi niño, duérmete mi amor," though her voice cracked and broke on every note. "The terms are simple," Grimes continued, pacing across the platform like a preacher delivering a sermon. "Whoever takes responsibility for this girl's debt will own her labor for a minimum of 3 years. She'll work as a housemaid, field hand, laundress, whatever service her new master deems appropriate. The child," he gestured dismissively at Thomas, "comes with her naturally, though I'll warn you, feeding another mouth may not be worth the trouble." "What about schooling?" a woman's voice called from the crowd. Maria recognized her as Mrs. Eleanor Pritchard, the schoolteacher who had once praised Maria's reading skills when her mother had briefly been able to afford tuition. "Surely the girl has a right to education." Grimes laughed, a harsh sound that made Maria flinch. "Ma'am, this is an indentured servant auction, not a Sunday school enrollment. The girl gave up her rights when she broke the law." Mrs. Pritchard's face flushed with anger, but she said nothing more. Her husband placed a firm hand on her shoulder, silencing her protest. "Now then," Grimes rubbed his hands together, "let's begin the bidding. Who'll start at 3 years of service?" For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched like a rope pulled taut, ready to snap. Maria dared to hope that perhaps no one would bid, that perhaps they would simply let her go. It was a foolish hope, she knew, but it was all she had left. Then a voice rang out from the back of the crowd, "I'll take her for 3 years." Maria's head snapped up. The speaker was Samuel Blackwood, owner of the largest cattle ranch outside Socorro. He was a man in his 50s with cold gray eyes and a reputation for working his ranch hands and anyone else in his employ until they collapsed. 2 of his previous servants had died under mysterious circumstances, though the sheriff had ruled both deaths accidental. Her blood turned to ice. 3 years from Mr. Blackwood," Grimes announced cheerfully. "Do I hear any other offers?" Another silence fell. No one wanted to bid against Blackwood. He was too powerful, too vengeful. Those who crossed him often found their wells poisoned or their crops mysteriously destroyed. Maria's arms tightened around Thomas. Her mind raced. If Blackwood took them to his ranch, 30 miles into the desert, they would never escape. She had heard stories, whispered tales of young women who went to work for him and were never seen in town again. "Going once," Grimes called. Thomas stirred in her arms, his small face scrunching up as if preparing to cry again. "Going twice." Maria closed her eyes and prayed to every saint her mother had ever taught her to name. Santa Maria, San Jose, San Antonio, anyone who might be listening. And then, from somewhere at the edge of the crowd, came a sound that made everyone turn. The distinct jingle of trading beads and the soft thud of moccasined feet on hard-packed earth. The crowd parted like water before a stone as the figure emerged from the dusty street. He was tall, taller than most men in Socorro, with broad shoulders that spoke of strength earned through survival rather than leisure. His skin was the color of sun-baked clay, and his hair fell past his shoulders in two thick braids adorned with small shells and blue beads that caught the morning light. He wore buckskin leggings, a simple cotton shirt traded from Mexican merchants, and a leather vest decorated with intricate beadwork that told stories Maria could not read. But it was his eyes that commanded attention. Dark as obsidian and just as sharp, they swept across the gathered townspeople with an expression that held neither fear nor aggression, only a quiet, unshakable certainty. Nietzsche of the Chiricahua Apache had come to Socorro that morning to trade pelts at the trading post, as he did every few months when his people needed supplies they could not make themselves. The relationship between his band and the town was uneasy but functional. The townspeople wanted the valuable furs, and Nietzsche's people needed metal tools, cloth, and occasionally medicines. It was a transaction built on necessity rather than trust. He had been preparing to leave when he heard the commotion in the town square. Curiosity had drawn him closer, and what he saw made something tighten in his chest. A feeling he thought he had buried years ago when the soldiers had taken his own sister during a raid. The girl on the platform was small and trembling, but she held her chin up with a dignity that reminded him of his mother. The baby in her arms was the same age his sister's child would have been had any of them survived that terrible winter. What is the meaning of this? Sheriff Tucker's hand moved instinctively to his pistol, though he didn't draw it. Relations with the Apache were fragile, and no one wanted to be the fool who started a war over a slave auction. Nietzsche's gaze moved from the sheriff to the girl, then to the auctioneer, and finally to Samuel Blackwood. He had heard of Blackwood. Every native trader knew to avoid his ranch. Men who went there to sell horses or meat rarely received fair payment, and some never returned at all. "I am here to trade," Nietzsche said in clear English. He had learned the language from missionaries as a child before his family had fled their attempts at civilization. His voice was deep, carrying easily across the square despite his calm tone. "I did not know Socorro now trades in children." A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Several men shifted uncomfortably. "This is a legal proceeding," Grimes sputtered, his face reddening. "The girl is a thief. She must pay her debt to society." Nietzsche walked slowly toward the platform, his moccasins making barely a whisper on the ground. From his shoulder, he unslung a large bundle wrapped in oiled canvas. He untied it carefully, revealing a collection of pelts that made several people in the crowd gasp audibly. There were beaver pelts, thick and lustrous, fox furs in rust and silver, and most valuable of all, 3 mountain lion hides, perfectly preserved, without a single flaw. Such pelts could fetch a fortune in Santa Fe or even as far east as St. Louis. "What is the debt?" Nietzsche asked, his eyes never leaving the auctioneer's face. $3.50, Mr. Henderson called out, stepping forward with greedy eyes, already calculating the value of those furs. "Plus damages." Nietzsche nodded slowly. He selected 1 beaver pelt, worth at least $10 at current trading prices, and placed it on the edge of the platform. Then he added a fox fur for good measure. "This covers the debt," he said simply, "and more." "Now wait just a minute." Blackwood's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. He strode forward, his face twisted with anger. "I made a legal bid. You can't just—" "The debt is paid," Nietzsche interrupted, his voice still calm, but carrying an edge of steel. "There is no auction if there is no debt." Sheriff Tucker looked between the Apache warrior, the furious rancher, and the pile of valuable furs. His hand remained on his pistol, but his mind was working quickly. Nietzsche was right. Legally speaking, if the debt was settled, there was no cause for indentured servitude. And those furs represented more wealth than Henderson would see from 3 years of a child's labor. "He's right," the sheriff said finally, though his voice was reluctant. "Debt's paid. Auction's over." Blackwood's face turned purple with rage. But even he knew better than to challenge both the law and an Apache warrior in the middle of town. He spat at Nietzsche's feet and stalked away, his boots striking the ground like hammer blows. Nietzsche turned to Maria, who stood frozen on the platform, unable to comprehend what had just happened. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small glass bottle filled with fresh goat's milk, purchased that very morning from a Mexican farmer on the outskirts of town. He extended the bottle toward Maria with a gentleness that seemed incongruous with his imposing stature. For a moment she could only stare at it, at the white liquid inside that her brother so desperately needed, at the calloused hand offering it without demand or expectation. "For the child," Nietzsche said quietly in Spanish, recognizing her heritage. "He is hungry." The words broke through her paralysis. Maria's trembling hands reached out and took the bottle. Thomas, sensing nourishment near, suddenly came alive in her arms, his small mouth opening like a baby bird's. She tilted the bottle carefully, and when the first drops of milk touched his lips, he latched on with desperate urgency, his tiny hands grasping at her fingers. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she watched her brother drink. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion that she had no words to express. She looked up at Nietzsche, trying to form the words "thank you" in English, but her throat was too tight, her voice too broken. He seemed to understand without words. He nodded once, then turned to address the crowd that still watched with a mixture of fascination and unease. "The girl and her brother, they will come with me," Nietzsche announced. It was not a question or a request, but a statement of fact delivered with quiet authority. The murmuring grew louder. Mrs. Pritchard pushed forward, her face concerned. "You can't just take them into the wilderness. She's a child. She needs proper care, civilization, schooling." "Your civilization," Nietzsche interrupted, his gaze sweeping across the auction platform. The sheriff, the dispersing crowd, was about to sell her like livestock. He paused, letting his words settle like stones into still water. "My people do not abandon children. We do not sell them. We take care of them." Mrs. Pritchard opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She had no counter to the truth he spoke. Sheriff Tucker stepped forward, his expression calculating. "Now, legally speaking, the girl's debt is paid, but she's still a minor without guardianship. Technically, she should be placed with a proper American family or sent to the territorial orphanage." "You would rather she starve in your orphanage than live free in the mountains?" Nietzsche's voice remained level, but his eyes flashed with something dangerous. "I have paid more than was owed. The debt is settled. The law has nothing more to say." The sheriff's hand tightened on his pistol grip, but he didn't draw. Around them, the crowd began to disperse, sensing that the entertainment was over and not wanting to be present if violence erupted. Mr. Henderson had already claimed his furs and disappeared into his store, his debt satisfied, his interest in Maria's fate extinguished. Nietzsche turned back to Maria, who had finished feeding Thomas. The baby was already drowsy, his belly finally full, his small face peaceful for the first time in days. She stared at the Apache warrior with wide, uncertain eyes. "You have a choice," Nietzsche said in Spanish, crouching slightly so his face was level with hers. "You can stay here in this town where they will find another reason to take you, another debt to claim. Or you can come with me to my people in the Gila Mountains. We have food, shelter, and children who have also lost their parents. No one will sell you. No one will take your brother. But the choice is yours." Maria's gaze darted around the town square, at the buildings that had never offered shelter, at the people who had watched her mother die without extending help, at the sheriff who stood ready to enforce laws that served the powerful and crushed the weak. Then she looked at Nietzsche's weathered face, at the steadiness in his dark eyes, at the scars on his hands that spoke of a hard life but honest work. She thought of Samuel Blackwood's cold eyes. She thought of the territorial orphanage she'd heard whispered about, a place where children were beaten for speaking Spanish, where they disappeared into servitude with no one to remember their names. And she thought of Thomas, sleeping peacefully in her arms, his life preserved by the compassion of a stranger. "I will come," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then, stronger, "I will come with you." Nietzsche nodded with approval. He stood and gestured toward the edge of town where two horses waited, a paint mare and a sturdy sorrel gelding, both laden with trading goods. Before they left the town square, Mrs. Pritchard hurried forward one last time. In her hand she carried a small cloth bundle tied with string. "Please," she said, pressing it into Maria's free hand. "Take this. It's not much. Some cornbread, dried apples, a spare blanket for the baby." Maria looked into the teacher's kind eyes and saw genuine concern there, perhaps even guilt for not having done more, not having spoken louder against the auction. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. Mrs. Pritchard touched Maria's cheek gently. "May God watch over you, child. Both of you." Then she stepped back, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Nietzsche helped Maria onto the paint mare with practiced efficiency, showing her how to balance while holding Thomas. He secured Mrs. Pritchard's bundle to the saddle along with his remaining trade goods, then swung onto his own horse with fluid grace. Without another word to the watching townspeople, he guided both horses toward the western road that led out of Socorro and into the wild country beyond. As they rode, Maria cast one last glance over her shoulder at the town. Somewhere in the small cemetery behind the church, her mother lay in an unmarked grave. They hadn't been able to afford a headstone or even a wooden cross. Maria mouthed a silent prayer, promising to remember, to honor her mother's memory by keeping Thomas safe. Then she turned her face forward toward the mountains that rose in the distance like ancient sentinels. The journey began in silence. Nietzsche set a steady pace, neither rushed nor leisurely, the gait of someone accustomed to covering long distances. The sun climbed higher, turning the sky from pale blue to brilliant turquoise. The desert landscape stretched around them in shades of ochre, rust and gold, dotted with mesquite, creosote bushes, and the occasional stark beauty of a saguaro cactus. Maria had never been beyond Socorro's outskirts. Everything seemed both vast and intimate. The cry of a hawk overhead, the rustle of a lizard scurrying across hot sand, the distant shimmer of heat that made the horizon waver like water. Thomas slept against her chest, lulled by the horse's gentle rhythm. Maria held him close, one arm wrapped protectively around his small body while her other hand gripped the saddle horn. Her legs were already aching from the unfamiliar position, but she didn't complain. She had learned young that survival meant enduring discomfort without protest. After perhaps 2 hours of riding, Nietzsche guided them off the main trail toward a small cluster of cottonwood trees that marked an underground spring. He dismounted and helped Maria down, his hands steady and impersonal. While the horses drank from the small pool of water that seeped between the rocks, he opened one of his packs and produced strips of dried venison and a leather waterskin. "Eat," he said simply, offering her the meat. "The journey is long." Maria accepted the food gratefully. The venison was tough and heavily salted, but it was protein, something she hadn't tasted in days. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Nietzsche sat on a nearby rock and scanned the horizon with the watchful gaze of someone who had learned that danger could appear from any direction. "Why did you help us?" Maria finally asked, the question that had been burning in her chest since the town square. She spoke in Spanish, uncertain if her English would be adequate for such an important conversation. Nietzsche was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on some distant point. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old sorrow. "My sister," he said quietly, She was taken during a raid when she was not much older than you. The soldiers came to our camp while the men were hunting. They took the women and children they wanted and killed the rest." He paused, his jaw tightening. "My sister had a baby, a girl. The soldiers said the Apache children were better off in their boarding schools, learning to be civilized. My sister fought them, they shot her. They took her daughter anyway." His eyes finally met Maria's. "I never found them. I never stopped looking, but I never found them." Maria felt her throat tighten at his words. She looked down at Thomas, imagining someone tearing him from her arms, taking him to a place where his name would be erased and replaced with something foreign, where speaking Spanish would earn him a beating. The thought made her grip him tighter. "I'm sorry," she whispered, understanding now the depth of the gift Nietzsche had given them. It wasn't just charity or kindness, it was an act of defiance against a world that had taken something precious from him, a world that would have done the same to her and Thomas. Nietzsche stood, signaling that their rest was over. "Come. We have many miles before nightfall, and the mountains are not kind to those who travel in darkness." They mounted again and continued westward. As the day progressed, the landscape began to change. The flat desert gave way to rolling hills covered in scrub oak and juniper. The air grew slightly cooler as they gained elevation, though the sun still beat down with relentless intensity. Maria's body ached in ways she'd never experienced. Her thighs burned from gripping the horse, her back throbbed from holding Thomas, and her lips were cracked despite sips from Nietzsche's water skin. But she endured. She had survived worse. The 3 days watching her mother's fever consume her, the night she'd spent shivering in an alley with Thomas, the terror of standing on that auction block. This pain was temporary and purposeful. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Nietzsche led them to a sheltered canyon where a small stream trickled between rocks. "We camp here tonight," he announced, helping Maria dismount. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, but she steadied herself against the horse. While Nietzsche tended to the animals and gathered wood for a fire, Maria sat on a smooth boulder and fed Thomas the last of Mrs. Pritchard's milk, which Nietzsche had kept cool, wrapped in a wet cloth. The baby drank hungrily, his small hands patting her chest with contentment. "Tomorrow," Nietzsche said as he arranged stones for a fire pit, "we will reach my people's camp. There are other children there, some orphaned by war, others by sickness. They will teach you our ways." "Will they accept us?" Maria asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been growing in her chest. "We are not Apache." Nietzsche struck flint against steel, sending sparks into the tinder he'd prepared. The sparks caught, and a small flame began to grow. "My people have learned that family is not always blood," he said, watching the fire. "We have taken in Navajo children, Mexican children, even the child of a white soldier once. What matters is not where you came from, but that you honor our ways and contribute to the community." He looked at her directly. "You will work hard. You will learn our language, our customs. In return, you will be protected, fed, and given a place. No one will sell you. No one will take your brother, but you must earn your place through respect and effort." Maria nodded solemnly. She was not afraid of hard work. Her mother had taught her to wash clothes until her hands bled, to scrub floors until her knees were raw, to endure whatever was necessary to survive. "I will work," she promised. "I will learn." Nietzsche grunted approval and returned his attention to the fire. He produced more dried meat and some kind of flatbread made from ground mesquite beans. The food was simple but nourishing, and Maria ate gratefully while Thomas dozed against her shoulder. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Nietzsche spread a blanket for Maria and the baby near the fire, then positioned himself between them and the open canyon entrance, a protector standing watch. Maria woke to the sound of birds singing in the pre-dawn darkness. For a moment, disoriented, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt Thomas's warm weight against her chest, heard the crackle of a fire being rekindled, and remembered everything: the auction, the warrior, the long ride into the wilderness. Nietzsche was already awake, moving with quiet efficiency as he packed their supplies. He glanced at her. "We leave soon. The camp is perhaps 3 hours from here." Maria nodded, her stomach twisting with nervousness. She had agreed to this path, but now that they were so close, doubt crept in. What if Nietzsche's people rejected her? What if they saw her as a burden, another mouth to feed during what she assumed were difficult times? As if sensing her anxiety, Nietzsche paused in his work. "They will judge you by your actions, not your fears," he said quietly. "Show them you are willing to learn, and they will teach." They rode as the sun climbed, the terrain growing more rugged. The hills became mountains, and pine trees began to appear among the scrub. The air was thinner here, cooler, scented with resin and earth. Maria saw deer tracks in the soft soil near a creek, and once, the massive paw print of a mountain lion that made Nietzsche pause and scan the surrounding rocks with sharp attention. Finally, as the morning sun reached its zenith, they rounded a rocky outcropping, and Maria saw the camp spread before them in a sheltered valley. It was not what she had expected. There were no teepees like she'd seen in drawings. Instead, wickiups made of bent branches and covered with brush and animal hides dotted the landscape in a loose arrangement. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and she could hear the sound of children's laughter, the whinny of horses, the rhythmic sound of someone pounding something in a mortar. Women looked up from their work as Nietzsche rode into camp with Maria behind him. Their faces were curious, guarded, assessing. Maria felt dozens of eyes on her, and she forced herself to sit straight despite her exhaustion and fear. An elderly woman approached as Nietzsche dismounted. She was small, perhaps in her 60s, with deeply lined skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a traditional style. She wore a long skirt and a blouse decorated with intricate beadwork, and she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Nietzsche spoke to her in Apache, gesturing to Maria and Thomas. The old woman's eyes sharpened as she listened, then she nodded slowly and approached Maria's horse. "Come down, child," she said in Spanish, her accent thick but understandable. "Let me see what Nietzsche has brought us." Maria carefully dismounted, cradling Thomas protectively. The old woman stepped close, examining her with eyes that missed nothing. The dirt on her dress, the hollowness of her cheeks, the desperate protectiveness in the way she held her brother. "I am Dahana," the woman said. "I am grandmother to many here. You may call me grandmother as well." She reached out and gently touched Thomas's cheek. "This one is very young." "How many moons?" "4 months," Maria whispered. Dahana clucked her tongue. "Too young to be without a mother's milk. But we have goats. You will learn to milk them." She looked Maria up and down again. "You are thin. You will eat. You will rest. Tomorrow, you will work." It was not a question or an offer. It was a simple statement of how things would be. Maria found it oddly comforting, this directness without pretense or false sympathy. Dahana led Maria to a wickiup on the eastern edge of the camp. Inside, it was dim and cool, with woven mats on the floor and a small fire pit in the center that vented through an opening at the top. 2 other children were there, a girl of perhaps 8 with serious dark eyes and a boy of about 6 who watched Maria with open curiosity. "This is Kaya," Dahana said, gesturing to the girl. "She is Navajo, came to us 2 winters ago when her village was raided. And this is Thomas. Yes, like your brother, but he was here first." She smiled slightly at her own joke. He is son of a Mexican woman and an Apache warrior, both dead now from fever. Kaya stood and approached Maria without speaking. She reached out and touched Thomas's tiny hand with one finger, then looked at Maria and said something in Apache. "She asks if she may hold him while you eat," Dahana translated. Maria hesitated, then slowly extended Thomas toward the older girl. Kaya took him with practiced competence, settling him in her arms and rocking gently. Thomas surprisingly did not cry. Perhaps he was simply too exhausted, or perhaps he sensed the gentleness in Kaya's touch. Dahana brought Maria a wooden bowl filled with a stew made from venison, wild onions, and some kind of root she didn't recognize. The food was seasoned differently than her mother's cooking, more bitter, earthier, but it was warm and filling. Maria ate slowly, trying not to devour it like a starving animal despite her hunger. As she ate, other children began to appear at the entrance of the wickiup, drawn by curiosity. There was Nasha, a girl of about 10 with a quick smile and nimble fingers that were always weaving something. There was Bidzil, a serious boy of 13 who had lost his parents in a skirmish with soldiers. And there was little Ayasha, barely 4 years old, who had been found wandering alone in the desert after her family's wagon was attacked by bandits. They spoke to Maria in a mixture of Apache, Spanish, and broken English, asking questions faster than Dahana could translate. Where was she from? How old was her brother? Did she know how to weave? Could she ride? Could she shoot? Maria answered as best she could, overwhelmed by their energy and acceptance. They didn't seem to care that she was Mexican or that she didn't speak their language. They only cared that she was here, that she was young like them, that she understood loss. That night, after Thomas had been fed goat's milk from a small clay bottle and put to sleep on a soft blanket, Dahana began Maria's first language lesson. She pointed to objects and spoke their names in Apache. Besh for knife, Tu for water, Ga for rabbit. Maria repeated each word carefully, her tongue stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds. "Good," Dahana said with approval. "You learn quickly. This is important. Words are bridges between people." Over the following days, a routine emerged. Maria woke before dawn to help tend the goats and gather water from the stream. Kaya taught her how to properly milk the goats without startling them, how to filter the water through woven grass to remove debris. Young Thomas showed her which plants were good for eating and which would make her sick. The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, Maria felt the transformation within herself. Her hands, once soft from town life, grew calloused from grinding mesquite beans, tanning hides and weaving baskets. Her Spanish mixed freely with Apache words until sometimes she couldn't remember which language a thought had originated in. Her skin darkened from constant sun exposure, and her body grew stronger from the physical demands of mountain life. Thomas thrived. At 7 months, he was plump and healthy, crawling eagerly across the wickiup floor and laughing when the other children played with him. Kaya had become like a sister to Maria, teaching her the intricate patterns of basket weaving and the songs that accompanied different tasks. Even Nietzsche, who remained somewhat distant and formal, would occasionally stop by to bring them fresh meat from a hunt or to check on Thomas's progress. But not everyone in the camp had accepted them so easily. There was Goyathle, a warrior in his 30s who had fought in many battles against both Mexican and American soldiers. He had lost his wife and 2 children in a raid, and his grief had hardened into bitterness. He spoke against Maria's presence at council meetings, arguing that feeding extra mouths weakened the band, that outsiders brought danger. "The girls' people killed my family," he said one evening when Maria happened to be gathering firewood near the council circle. His voice carried clearly in the still air. "Why should we protect their children when they slaughtered ours?" Maria froze behind a juniper tree, her heart pounding. She had known not everyone welcomed her, but hearing it spoken so plainly made her stomach twist. Nietzsche's response was calm but firm. The girl did not kill your family. The soldiers did. If we punish children for the sins of their people, we are no better than those who raided our camps. She is a burden, Goyatle insisted, and the baby cries. He alerts game animals when we hunt nearby. Before Nietzsche could respond, Dahana's voice cut through the discussion like a knife. The girl works harder than warriors twice her age. She has learned our language faster than any outsider I have known. She asks for nothing she has not earned. And the baby... Her voice softened slightly. The baby reminds us why we fight. To protect the innocent. To preserve life. The council fell silent. Maria pressed her back against the rough bark of the tree, tears streaming down her face. Not from hurt, but from gratitude for these people who defended her when she could not defend herself. The next day, Goyatle approached Maria directly. She was working on a basket, her fingers moving in the pattern Kaya had taught her, when his shadow fell across her lap. She looked up, trying to keep her expression neutral despite her racing heart. He studied her for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. Then he reached into the pouch at his belt and pulled out a small object, a doll carved from wood, smoothed and polished with oil. It was simple but beautiful, clearly made with skill and care. For the baby, he said gruffly in Spanish, so he has something to hold besides his sister. Maria took the doll with trembling hands, understanding what this gesture meant. It was not an apology. Goyatle was not a man who apologized. It was acceptance. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He nodded once and walked away without another word. But Maria noticed that evening, when Thomas crawled near the cooking fire, it was Goyatle who gently redirected him away from the flames, his large, scarred hand surprisingly gentle on the baby's back. 2 years passed like water flowing over stone, gradually reshaping everything it touched. Maria, now 14, stood on the ridge overlooking the camp as the sun rose behind the eastern peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Thomas, nearly 3 years old, sat beside her, chattering in a mixture of Apache and Spanish about the hawk circling overhead. She barely recognized the frightened girl who had stood on that auction block in Socorro, that Maria had been hollow with grief, desperate with hunger, paralyzed by fear. This Maria had calluses earned from honest work, strength built from mountain living, and a community that had taught her that family was not always born from blood. Below, the camp was waking. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Women emerged from wiki-ups to begin their morning tasks. Children laughed as they chased each other between the structures. And there, near the horse corral, she saw Nietzsche speaking with several younger warriors, teaching them tracking techniques with patient gestures. Shida, Thomas tugged on her skirt, using the Apache word for sister. Hungry. Maria smiled and lifted him onto her hip. He was getting heavy now, solid and healthy. "Then we go eat, little brother." They descended the path to camp, where Dahana had already prepared the morning meal. As Maria settled Thomas on a mat and accepted a bowl of corn porridge, Kaya joined them, now 10, and already showing the skilled hands of a master basket weaver. "Nietzsche says traders are coming tomorrow," Kaya announced in Apache, "from Santa Fe. They want to buy baskets and blankets." Maria's heart quickened slightly. Traders meant news from the outside world, goods they couldn't make themselves, but also potential danger. In the 2 years since she'd arrived, the tension between Apache bands and the American military had only intensified. More reservations were being established, more bands forced onto restricted lands. But Nietzsche and the elders had kept their people free by staying mobile, trading peacefully when possible, and avoiding conflict. It was a precarious balance, and Maria understood how fragile their freedom truly was. That afternoon, As Maria worked on a basket with geometric patterns Dahana had taught her, Nietzsche approached. He sat beside her in comfortable silence before speaking. "You have done well," he said quietly in Spanish. "Both of you. Thomas is strong. You have learned our ways and honored them. You saved our lives," Maria replied, her fingers never stopping their weaving. "Everything I am now, I owe to that choice you made." Nietzsche shook his head. "I gave you opportunity. You made the choice to grow, to learn, to belong. That was your strength, not mine." He paused, then added softly, "My sister would have liked you. She would have been proud to call you family." Maria's throat tightened with emotion. In 2 years, Nietzsche had never spoken of his sister so directly. She understood what he was truly saying, that she and Thomas had become the family he had lost, that saving them had somehow saved him too. "I am honored," she whispered, setting down her basket to meet his eyes. "To be part of your family, to be Apache." And she was. Not by blood or birth, but by choice and survival, by shared meals and learned language, by calloused hands and mountain-hardened feet. She was Maria of the Chiricahua, sister to Thomas, daughter to Dahana, protected by Nietzsche, accepted by a community that had taught her the most important lesson of all, that love and compassion knew no boundaries of culture or color, that a stolen bottle of milk and a warrior's choice could change the course of 2 lives forever, that sometimes the family you find is stronger than the family you lose. As the sun set that evening, Maria watched Thomas play with the wooden doll Goyathle had carved, surrounded by children of many nations who had all found refuge in these mountains. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was exactly where she belonged.